We all want our kids to attend a good school in order to get the best education possible, but how do you know if your local school is actually a good school? Well, today's guest has something to say on this issue. Peter Cowley is a senior fellow at the Fraser Institute, which is a Canadian independent think tank, and he's the co-author of the 2024 report card on Alberta's elementary and high schools. You can read these reports at compareschoolrankings.org. Peter, welcome. Great to have you with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Okay, so Peter, you have been ranking schools for many years now. So tell us how this works. Is every single elementary school in and high school, are all the schools in Alberta ranked, including private schools?
Yes, indeed.
Okay, so are the schools being ranked only in academic performance, or are there additional ways that they're being ranked?
Well, the ranking has to do with how the students have done in terms of education, and also how the schools have done relative to others. But we are talking only about results. And so, for instance, there's unfortunately no indicator of how well the schools do in sport or something like that. I'd like to have that, by the way, and have tried to get that into the report, but with unfortunately, there's only so much you can do. So at any rate, what we're trying to do with the report is to give parents, teachers, school board folk, anyone who is interested in education, we want to provide them with a comparison so that you could look, for instance, in the 5 schools near your house and say, are there any differences based on the ranking between the one that your child is going to and the one that's just a few doors down the way? And it can actually be extraordinarily important because the question becomes, if there are differences between 2 schools in academics, why?
Yeah, that's a good question. So how does it work? What are you looking at? You're basically looking at report card results then?
Well, not report card results, but exam tests that are taken by all the kids in all the parts of the province. So these are provincial exams, and the results of those are really the main part of this report card. It doesn't just look at how the school or the students um, perform, but also what percentage of the kids had less than a an appropriate amount of information. Um, and so what we try to do is provide as much information as possible for, say, parents to understand how the school is going that their child is in.
So it sounds like it's basically looking at the results of exams, right? What if a child isn't good at exams, but they're good in every other area? Some people just are bad test takers.
Well, a bad test. It would be interesting to know what a bad test taker is. Maybe it's bad testing, uh, but but we are talking about a school level result. So I mean, if there are, and there will be, certainly there will be differences between students, but what we're looking at is overall how have the students in a particular school done, and this is the magic of it, how do they do in this particular school relative to other schools, and just as importantly, how the results at that school have improved or declined over time. And
Okay.
that's a very important thing because if, say, for instance, you find that historically a school is doing poorer and poorer in terms of the students' results over, say, 5 years, this school people, the principal and the people at the school board have got to answer that question: why is this particular school's results declining, and what can we do about it? Because one of the most important things about these results is it's got specific information that people can use to make better results. And that's the whole point of it.
Okay. I know recently the Alberta's Teachers Association has been saying for a while now that Alberta schools are behind in terms of funding and that, in fact, they're the least funded schools in the entire country. So this is, of course, based on data released earlier this year, but it's based on the 2020-21 school year. I think they said something like just over 11,000 per student per year was allocated, whereas the Canadian average for all the provinces for that same school year was 13,300 per student. So do you think that any of that plays a factor in the results that you're finding? Like if we were better funded, would we see better results, for example?
Well, I'm sure the teachers union and the schools themselves would rather have more money than less. I mean,
Of
that's
course.
pretty much certain.
Yeah.
But let's remember that this is a ranking of schools by school, right? So, gently, one would expect that all the schools are more or less roughly getting the same amount of money to produce the results. So we're not really, there's nothing in the report card that will be of much use when it comes to that, what you're talking about.
Right.
Uh,
Okay.
but
Do you
it's,
see the
but
difference between
it's
Alberta schools and, say, Ontario schools or British Columbia
and
schools?
then the other thing is the report card doesn't allow us to compare how the schools are doing in Alberta versus Ontario. What we're looking at is simply how is an individual school's results um, compare to others in the same in the same province and also even in the same general area, because what we're looking for is um, uh, giving people an opportunity to produce a better outcome for the kids at the school, and that has to do with saying, you know, over there we have some results that suggest that this school should be able to do better, given that the kids are pretty much the same as the kids a little bit farther down the road, but those ones down the road are doing better than our own school. That's really the question, and that's the result that we look for. Because if you find opportunities through the comparisons, then the kids will have a better chance to do even better.
Yeah. Do these rankings potentially tell us about the quality of teachers, of the teachers of that school, or is that sort of difficult to sort out?
Well, there's got to be a reason. So let's say, for instance, you have two schools. Generally, the kids at both schools are general in terms of family, a certain amount of income. We would like to answer the question: why is it that the kids at one school are doing better than on a year after year? Uh, we're doing better than other schools. That's the and therein lies again. If you can find the reasons why one school is doing for better than the other, the kids will do better, and that's really what the
Yeah.
report card is all about.
Have you been able to pinpoint why certain schools are doing better than others? Or you're
Well,
based,
you actually answered that question first one ever, saying, "Well, are the teachers at one school better than others?" And it's entirely possible that they are. And how could that come out? How could that be? Well, it could be that the principal of the school is better in finding the schools that are doing the best for their children,
interesting.
and so they've, the group of teachers who are at that school may be better in terms of the academic results versus others. And if they're not, if they're not, the important question for educators and for principals is, if we're doing not as well as the schools in and around the area, why? And it might be, for instance, that a particular school has a larger percentage of relatively recent teachers from teachers college. So maybe they're not as well, or
So like new
they're not.
graduates, they're not as experienced, perhaps.
Maybe that's it, and maybe
Okay.
there's a reason why there are a number of these, and maybe there shouldn't be so many of them there.
That's
So.
interesting. Okay, so in your results, you include something called the tests not written indicator. So what is that all about?
Well, if there is a reason, if there, for any reason, um, a, s- a percentage of the students who should take the test, particular test, don't, for whatever reason, then we figure that you've got to put that in. And of course, what you'd like is to make sure that all of the students participate in all the exams. One for their purposes of finding out how the school is doing. But if you have a situation like that, the school principal and the school board must be asking that question. That's why are we having a smaller percentage of people taking the tests? Is it that because when they hear about a test coming up for next Wednesday, all of a sudden 15% of the kids disappear until the past? Maybe. Um, but if that was happening, then the principal's got to do something
Right.
about it
Yeah,
for
that's
sure.
on a more individual school basis. Your research also includes something about a gender gap. So, can you maybe explain
Sure.
how that factor ranks, how that factors into the rankings?
Well, the rankings um, are developed by looking at the various indicators that we have in the report card. One of them is, as you said, a gender gap. And what that looks for is, well, what percentage of the students, of the female students, how did they do, say, in math, relative to the boys in the same class, essentially, at the same school? Uh, how did they do comparatively? Or girls and boys. And what one would like to find out is whether or not there is an opportunity to do a better job with the kids who are of a certain gender, that are not doing as well as the overall number of the overall students. So again, what we're looking for is the opportunity by getting these data, school by school, year by year, opportunities for improvement of results for all kids at every school.
Yeah, exactly. Talk to us a little bit about the trend indicator. Why is this important?
So very important. Um, you should say, for instance, you're at a particular school, and its ranking over the last, say, 5 years is showing no improvement. They're out of 10. I mean, by the way, the results, the ranking of the results are from 0 to 10, where 10 is a very high level of performance and 0 is very low level. What you want to do is move that up. Um, and so what we want to find out is, over a period of 5 years, how is the school doing? Is it improving or declining? And you will find decliners and improvers across the spectrum of schools. But it is, of course, what we'd always want to say to the teachers and the school board people: we want to improve. I mean, we don't want to stay just this way, or going down. So that indicator is extraordinarily important, possibly the most important, because if you see that a school's results are going up, you know that it can improve. All that is required is you've got to figure out how, and get going with it.
What kind of recommendation do you have for parents as to how they should best go about researching this if they're putting their kids in school?
Have a look at the report card for the schools that your children are with, or who may be coming into the school, because it is entirely possible that there are people who are looking at the report card and saying, we want our child to go to a school that is highly ranked. And hopefully, they would also be willing to be in touch with the school principals and ask what it is that they're doing to ensure that their kids and all the kids at the school are getting a good
Right. I'm sure
education.
these rankings are undoubtedly helpful for parents in making that decision as to which school would be best for their child naturally. But we're out of time here. But thanks so much for being with us today, Peter. Appreciate having you on today.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.